My name is Damon Adams. I'm 37 years old, and my childhood was a typical Generation X upbringing. With a father in the military, I had a disciplined beginning at home and at school, and joined the Royal Australian Navy at the age of 17, a teenager, as an Intelligence Analyst. My exposure to drugs at that time of my life were alcohol and tobacco, and I tried cannabis in year 11, where I had my first exposure to a plant that would one day change my life. Every drug user I saw was a junkie, regardless of purpose, and the education of say no to drugs, this is your brain on drugs, and reefer madness was not an evidence-based and backed education that most of us grew up with, but based on mistruths, birthed by racism, and fed by fear. 1937 saw the introduction of the Tax Act against cannabis by Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics at the time, which ceased the relationship between humans and a plant which had been used for 10 millennia before. He was quoted at the time as saying, "Most marijuana smokers are Negroes, Hispanics, jazz musicians and entertainers. Their satanic music is driven by marijuana, and marijuana smoking by white women makes them want to seek sexual relations with Negroes, entertainers and others. It is a drug that causes insanity, criminality and death, the most violence-causing drug in the history of mankind." He said it. The New York Academy of Medicine, in the 1944 LaGuardia Committee report, refuted Anslinger's claims to the dangers he said cannabis caused, including the gateway theory. Anslinger replied saying the doctors were dangerous and threatened to have anyone in prison that researched cannabis. And so began the age of prohibition. After 11 years in the Navy as an intelligence analyst, including active service in the Middle East as part of the International Coalition Against Terrorism, I rejected a promotion to a desk job in Canberra and discharged at my own request to pursue a family, and married soon after. I then set my sights on stability and joined the South Australian Police. At this stage, my life and my perception was that all druggies were subhumans and should be put in jail. My time at the academy was supportive of this dogma, with old school mentors teaching old school mindsets. Cannabis was just as bad as heroin. I shook Commissioner Hyde's hand, put my badge in my pocket, and started patrolling on the streets of Adelaide's northern suburbs. Exposure to cannabis was an almost everyday occurrence, and if you weren't giving out expiations for personal possession, you were organised to help another team on a raid. Having size 13 boots and some weight behind me, I enjoyed kicking the doors in of the criminals and putting their dangerous plants in a room with a label to be incinerated at a later date, while entering the people into the system, most of them for personal use, most of them for the first time. During my time at the academy in 2007, I suffered a knee injury, causing surgery and a lifelong pain management plan with prescribed opiates. My dosage was increased as time went on, as the pain got worse from irreversible deterioration. My body became dependent on prescribed opiates, and I spent many nights on the couch so as not to wake my wife, when the withdrawals were causing horrendous side effects after ceasing the pills. The side effects were causing me to take more medication, which meant a cocktail of 2 or 3 types of medication, each of them to counter the other's effects, all consumed legally. After 4 years with the police, I left to continue studies and became a stay-at-home dad to my 2 sons while my wife worked. At that time, I was prescribed enough opiates to fatally overdose on a $6 prescription. There had to be another option. A friend with multiple sclerosis mentioned cannabis in a conversation I was having with her and suggested I try it for my pain. I think I may have guffawed a snortier reply, and she picked up on my body language, and she gave me a quick education on how she uses it and how it affects her symptoms. It was a defining moment in my life, and I struggled to process information that went against anything I was ever taught about drugs. I agreed to try it, and I sourced it for the first time in my life as a criminal. My legal options had run out. My pain is a constant companion, only dulled by the opiates, which also dull your personality, relationships with others, and your own life. The desperation for something other than pills had reached a stage where I no longer feared for my own clean record and moralistic way of living, and would do absolutely anything not to only lessen the pain, but also not be subjected to the side effects and secondary medications and possible criminal record. I constructed a small bong, just like the dozens I'd taken from sad teenagers in the years previously as a police officer, and inhaled a lungful of cannabis smoke. I was expecting to get the munchies, I was expecting to get a dry mouth, but what I was not expecting was the effect it had on my pain. It didn't remove the pain, yet it was at such a level that it did not hinder my movement or that I was cognitively aware of the pain. And I could still maintain an active and functional lifestyle. It was instant relief. Not only was the pain being managed better than the opiates could, but other aspects of my life also improved, including my sleep, my own health, and personal relationships. I was still a criminal for treating myself illegally. I had two choices to treat my pain: buy a packet of prescribed opiates for $6, which gave more problems on top of my pain, or buy cannabis on the black market at black market prices and no quality control. The cannabis could do what the opiates never could, so it was a no-brainer for me. The quality of life was worth the risk. What I also risked was a lifetime of mateships with military and police colleagues when I came out as a cannabis advocate and started re-educating family and peers on evidence-based cannabis research. I was determined to find out why I was a criminal and why the plant was so stigmatised and prohibited. It didn't take long to realise my entire education I'd ever received about drugs or cannabis was completely untrue and not founded on evidence-based science. Research of cannabis studies led me to an awareness of a few truths I'd previously not known. Our own endocannabinoid system, its prevalence of receptors in our brain and immune system, and how it interacts with the cannabinoids produced not only by the cannabis plant, but also our own brain. They showed me our brains make a cannabinoid called anandamide, and breast milk contains 2-AG, a cannabinoid that gives babies a thrive function to feed, otherwise known as the munchies, and strengthening their developing immune systems through their CB2 receptors. If you see a dopey baby after being breastfed, they're not milk drunk, they're milk stoned. The non-toxicity of cannabis is widely evidenced, with 0 reported overdose deaths in 5,000 years of documented medical history. Smoking a natural plant flower gave me a better life than a man-made pill and would not kill me. The gateway drug myth was refuted by the Lugard Committee in 1944, and the schizophrenia theory was disproved by a Harvard study in 2013, with genetic predisposition for mental illness being a cause for mental illness, not cannabis. I started researching with different types and strains of cannabis, trying to find the best for treating my pain. Of the two main cannabinoids found in cannabis, THC and CBD, I found that THC was required along with CBD to give the best relief. I did not experience any negative side effects with cannabis that will require secondary medications, and my health is better than it has ever been. I'm in my second year of university, on my way to becoming a middle school science teacher, and have been the academic student representative in both years. I'm also the chair for my local kindergarten governing council, and until I publicly announced my cannabis use on national television last year, whilst as a panellist for an SBS Insight special on cannabis, I was also employed at a primary school OSH as a caregiver before being sacked, after advice from the Department of Education and Child Development to protect the reputation of the school community. It was a great school, and my heart broke not being able to see the kids I built relationships with, and because I was judged for using an illegal drug in my own private life instead of taking debilitating but legal prescribed painkillers. I knew my public advocacy for cannabis legalisation would be a bumpy road, but I never expected that. I was discriminated against for something I did in my own time behind closed doors. How this will affect further employment is unknown, and in 2 years when I'm handing my teaching degree, I'm not sure I'll even be able to get a job. The education of cannabis is multifaceted and needs to be taught from politicians to school kids, and all information must be challenged for its source and credibility. Cannabis use has not damaged my potential career, the broken laws against it have. Since starting my cannabis journey, I've broadened my search for peer-reviewed studies with evidence-based science, funded by groups with no vested interests. There are hundreds of patents, such as patent 6630507 from the US Department of Health, stating various claims of medicinal capabilities of cannabis. There are thousands of clinical reports covering capabilities against conditions that range from neurodegenerative disorders such as Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, motor neurodisease, to heart attack, stroke, multiple sclerosis, epilepsy, and cancers of the skin, bowel, breast, and brain. There are multiple pharmaceutical companies with patents for cannabinoid medicines, and the only people making money from it being illegal are corporations or cartels. The science and awareness of the science has taken over the moralistic attitude towards cannabis, and the criminality involved with possession or consumption is stopping a lot of people from having a fuller quality of life. People that you might know, perhaps even yourself. We've all had a prescription of something from the pharmacist, and we all know someone affected by cancer, pain, epilepsy, list goes on. I've met many mums and dads with children who have intractable epilepsy and suffer almost non-stop seizures. Some of these parents decided that the child's life is worth risking breaking the law for and source cannabis products before administering them to their affected child. Every story is nothing short of amazing, with cannabis stopping seizures in their tracks where a multitude of pharmaceutical products had not, could not. Seeing these children respond in such an amazing way totally transformed them. After being in a zombified state for such a long time under pharma drugs, they were able to smile, speak, walk, talk, and laugh, sometimes for the first time. No other secondary medications have been required, and their quality of life is above and beyond what was experienced previously under legal medication. As a father of now 3 boys, there is nothing I wouldn't do, legal or not, to ensure their health and happiness. Some parents have gone public with their story of giving cannabis to their children in an effort to help give a voice and support the silent majority that can't risk it. Also imagine the stress the parents no longer have to go through with seizures and CPR in the middle of the night on the bedroom floor. The general public are becoming aware of the properties of cannabis through media and the groundswell of global cannabis legalisation. And the Prohibition-era propaganda is quickly being dissolved by the science and more people like me and you guys with personal and lived experience of its effects. Any parent can tell you they would do anything at all, criminal or not, to save the life of their child. Our current legislation is putting those parents in unimaginable situations and not improving the life of their child in any way. Cannabis can be quickly and easily established and regulated in Australia, with 25 states in the US having medical cannabis legislation already and 4 with full legalisation. It is a huge industry that is renewable, sustainable, and will set Australia ahead of the rest, but not for economic reasons. Sure, it will be an industrial and economic boom, but more so it will be the people that benefit from the cannabis, as well as those that move here for a better quality of life. This is already happening in Colorado and Washington states, and has been dubbed the Green Rush. The social benefits are tremendous, the sky has not fallen, and it has been a win-win situation across the board. Medical cannabis trials, such as the one announced by Mike Baird, are not good enough. A 5-year trial costing $9 million is an insult to the taxpayer and the plethora of scientists, peer-reviewed research and evidence that already exists. Reinventing the wheel delays the inevitable and puts further lives at risk by denying them access to a flower that could save their life. Going down the path of CBD-only legislation is also risking lives that could benefit from THC, such as mine. And we have to be careful not to perpetuate prohibition by demonising individual cannabinoids. As previously mentioned, the opiates I'm prescribed can kill me. Cannabis cannot. Children will never be killed by cannabis either. The same can't be said for legal pharmaceutical medicines or legal drugs like alcohol, tobacco, and caffeine. I've served my state and I've served my country. I know firsthand the cannabis laws are not only useless, they are harmful to our society. I was a federal Senate candidate for the Drug Law Reform Party led by Greg Chipp in 2013. I'm the Vice President of LEAP Australia, which is made up of ex and current members of the Justice System Against Prohibition and the failed war on drugs. Not once during my policing did I experience a violent cannabis user. Alcohol was by far and away the drug that fueled the quantity of aggression and damage. It disheartens and frustrates me when I know a plant can give back my quality of life, yet I'm treated like a criminal because of this choice. Alcohol is celebrated in our society, yet we have become blind and complacent to the damage it causes. The World Health Organization states there is a death every 6 seconds from tobacco and every 10 seconds from alcohol. With the two most widely accepted drugs in the world causing the most amount of harm, it's absurd that cannabis, with its 0 recorded deaths, is still being enforced as illegal. In September of last year, a report was released from the Global Commission on Drug Policy, made up of former presidents, prime ministers, United Nations Secretary General and High Commissioners, among others. It recommended a legalised and regulated cannabis market, which focused on reduction of harm with a bonus of immense social, economic, health and justice benefits. Tony Abbott mentioned last year in a letter to Alan Jones, "I have no problem with the medical use of cannabis, just as I have no problem with the medical use of opiates." He also stated, "If a drug is needed for a valid medicinal purpose and is being administered safely, there should be no question of its legality. And if a drug that is proven to be safe abroad is needed here, it should be available." I spoke to Alan on his show about what Tony said, and neither of us knew why reform wasn't happening. How much longer do we have to wait for someone brave enough to stand up for what is right and do what is required to right the wrongs of the past? It's time we left the moralistic and ideological past and focused on the science of the present to have a profoundly positive effect on the future of our state, its parents and our children. My name's Damon Adams, I'm a cannabis consumer, and what can I do for you? Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Any questions? It's got to be questions. Question down there? What's that, sorry?
How many members do you have in LEAP?
We have an amazing 2 members in LEAP. 2. There's Paul Cubitt. He is a correctionals officer in the ACT, and myself. It's been very hard to get funding or seed funding from the main LEAP guys overseas and that sort of stuff, and it's always been a struggle, but we keep it alive and keep floating, and let's see how we go. Cheers. Yeah, mate?
Are there other police who actually feel
Many. But there's also other police that also have a pay packet to protect, a mortgage to pay, kids to protect, and unfortunately there's a lot of people that can't voice their own opinions because they need a job, and that's the end of the story, really. It's just they've got to protect their money or their honesty, so it's unfortunate, and like I said, it's disheartening to see that it happens, but I was there and I know what it was like, and it was like anyone else in these times, I guess. If you've got a mortgage to pay and that income's not there, then you do what you do and you get told to do what you got to do, and yes sir, no sir, 3 bags full sir. Go home and get pissed off with the world and go back to work the next day. Yeah.
Now there's a mic coming around for questions, so yes, thank you. Please wait until you have the microphone before you start. Thank you.
Hi, Damon.
Hi, Will.
Hi, Damon. My question is, I'm really interested in what opportunities do you see for medical cannabis to be associated with broader drug law reform advocacy? Like, where are the opportunities and the limits, and what are the priorities right now, I suppose?
Yeah, I think there's a bit of a war happening at the moment with in the political stage. I briefed a few senators and that sort of stuff a few weeks ago. Yesterday there were roundtable talks in SA that I pre-recorded for. There's a bit of a demonisation going on between medical and recreational cannabis. It's really hard to try to explain to people that our bodies don't discriminate or differentiate between a bag of medical cannabis or a bag of recreational cannabis. And if I have a joint this morning for pain for my leg and that's medical, and then after this speech I have a water and another joint and that's recreational, am I allowed to have one in the morning and not after my speech, or that sort of thing? So we've got to clear up the whole what are we fighting for? Is this about the kids and the people that need it, or are we going to start trying to like separate and demonise cannabinoids and that sort of thing? So we've got to be careful. We don't want to create another prohibition ourselves from what we're doing. But that's an education thing, and we really need to get out there and just make people aware of the synergistic effect and whole plant medicine theory. Well, it's not a theory, it's proven science. Medical-wise and going forward, I think a lot of us reformists need to work together a lot more and try to build some sort of just a communication network to keep on top of everything and communicate with each other. We're all going for the same cause. So we just need to talk to each other more instead of just hiding our little plans and agendas and that sort of stuff. The more data we get, then the more we can share around and progress it forward. Does that answer your question well? Thank you. Any others? Down the front. Sorry for the sweating, it's a bit bright up here.
Have you ever heard of Dr. Emoto? He's Japanese. He passed away last year, I think. He actually says that the marijuana plant brings healing to the land. The vibrations of the plant bring healing. Have you heard of that?
No, I haven't heard of the doctor himself, but your story does remind me about something I just found out. They had a old mining site around Siberia that got shut down for 30 years, and one of the first plants they found growing back inside the mine site was cannabis ruderalis. No one knew how it got there, no one knew why, but it was there. And they used cannabis at Chernobyl to help clean up the soil content as well when it was there. So it's a great plant, everyone knows it works. We just got to get this information out there and educate the school kids as well as the politicians. But we need to do that without being zealots, and it's a bit hard for me sometimes. I get passionate and angry about what I'm fighting for. I don't represent really any organisation besides LEAP. I'm a freelance cannabis volunteer lobbyist, and the more we can just get out there and just give people the polite facts, and if they choose to ignore the facts, then we just need to keep on banging that door until they go, but it's happening quick. Any more? Oop, one in the middle.
I'd just like to hear more about LEAP, your vision for it and the international connection.
Yeah, the international connection, I don't think there is a connection there. They sort of let us go on our own and said, let's see how you can build it yourselves, which wasn't too nice. But I think until it starts becoming a little bit less stigmatised and more mainstream and more police are allowed to come out and talk about it openly without being chastised or stigmatised in their workplace. I think once we get more people on board from the police as well, Mick Palmer and that sort of stuff, that can talk about these things openly and not have to worry about any implications with their employment. It will slowly happen, we'll slowly get it up again and get it going, but it's one of those slow processes. So if you know any ex-coppers or the guys down the road, get them to join up. Yeah, I had a chat with them, let them know I was doing the speech this morning, but they all said they were on shift work and needed sleep, and it's a hard life for the boys. I can't believe there's 9 cops in a town of 400 people. Can't believe it. That's crazy. Yeah, 99 this weekend. All right, that's it, guys. Any more questions? I'm done. Sweet, no worries. Cheers.